For decades, the name David Phelps wasn't just a symbol, it was a seismic event in gospel music. With a voice that seemed to defy gravity and a spirit forged in deep faith, he was far more than a singer. He was an unforgettable experience. From sold-out arenas to humble gatherings, David's sound became a powerful light, touching millions and inspiring hearts globally. He wasn't simply talent, he was a tidal wave of passion. A dreamer whose powerful tenor delivered every syllable with raw, undeniable conviction. When David Phelps joined the Gaither vocal band, the musical landscape shifted completely. His legendary tenor became the undisputed heart of the group, whether elevating spirits with a heroic, triumphant anthem or bringing a crowd to its knees with a quiet, humble hymn. His voice possessed a rare ability to connect with people exactly where they were most vulnerable. But his immense gift was never about showmanship, it was about intimacy. Every lyric felt like a secret whispered just to you. Every concert felt less like a show and more like a heart-to-heart conversation. Fans felt he was singing their story, their grief, their conviction. Beyond the Gaither stage, David's solo career exploded. Albums like Life is a Church and Freedom shattered gospel conventions, proving his artistry was boundless. He became a rare bridge, a vibrant storyteller, merging scripture with sound, tradition with bold innovation. His music wasn't just listened to, it was absorbed. His concerts transcended mere entertainment. They were acts of worship, deep introspection, and pure celebration. Fans idolized him not only for his vocal might, but for his profound, quiet humility. Despite his towering fame, David remained anchored to what truly mattered. He spoke openly about his devotion to his wife, his children, and the peaceful sanctuary of his home. While others relentlessly pursued the spotlight, David's true foundation was always his faith and his family. But even while receiving those ecstatic standing ovations, a dramatic change was unfolding. A struggle was beginning. One his most devoted fans never saw coming. Behind the curtain, David was fighting a hidden war. Years of relentless touring, the suffocating pressure of perfection, and the sheer demands of a public life were slowly, relentlessly draining him. Initially, it manifested as subtle fatigue, a few missed notes, the need for increasingly long breaks. Yet, this wasn't just typical road exhaustion. A crushing heaviness settled over him, one he couldn't shake. Backstage, he started spending quiet moments, head in his hands. His energy, once famously limitless, began to noticeably dim. The powerhouse performer the world adored now looked undeniably weary between songs. And then, the unthinkable. The voice, the very instrument that had made him a legend, began to betray him. During sound checks, he would suddenly cut off mid-note, repeatedly clearing his throat, shaking his head in frustration. Something was terrifyingly wrong. His own perfectionism tried to explain it away as simple allergies or stress. But his inner circle saw the truth he desperately tried to conceal. He was struggling, and this terrifying affliction was not receding. Soon came the cancellations. At first, it was just a few shows. His management released vague, unsatisfying statements, scheduling conflicts, unforeseen circumstances, but the rumors were spreading like wildfire. Was he truly sick? Was this burnout? Was David Phelps actually walking away? His once active social media feed became a dead silence. Friends grew deeply concerned. Fans waited anxiously for an answer that never came. Yet, David kept smiling, his gentle reassurance a thin shield. "I'm just taking it easy. Nothing to worry about." But there was everything to worry about. And then the moment of truth arrived. At a small, private gathering, surrounded by his closest friends and longtime patrons, David walked onto the stage. He greeted the small room with his trademark warmth, but something was profoundly different. There was no theatrical flash, no grand entrance, just David, exposed and vulnerable. He took one long, shaky breath. "For the past few months," he began, his voice softer than usual, I've been facing a challenge I never, ever thought I would. The room plunged into absolute silence. I've been dealing with a health condition that has dramatically affected my energy, my ability to perform, and yes, even my voice. He refrained from sharing the agonizing medical specifics, but his confession was more than enough to stun the crowd. Whether it was a debilitating vocal disorder, a troubling neurological condition, or something far more serious, the tragic reality was painfully clear. David Phelps, the voice that had been the support for so many, now desperately needed support of his own. Tears instantly welled up in the eyes of those present. Quiet sobs echoed in the room. Friends and fans watched in crushing silence as the man who had effortlessly lifted their spirits for decades stood before them, now visibly unsure of what his own future held. For all these years, he said, his voice a fragile thread, my voice has been my greatest gift, my life's calling. But recently, I have had to confront the devastating possibility that I may not always be able to share it the way I used to. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. I genuinely don't know what tomorrow holds, he confessed. But I do know this one thing. My faith is stronger than it has ever been. And I trust that God has a clear plan, whether I am standing on the stage or away from it. There was no music, no performance. Just a man, immensely brave, unflinchingly honest, temporarily broken, but absolutely not defeated. In that moment, David Phelps was stripped of his icon status. He was simply a human being, a beloved husband, a loving father, an unwavering believer. Word of his raw, public revelation spread globally in an instant. Across every continent, fans flooded social media with fervent prayers and messages of love. Fellow gospel artists, high-profile celebrities, and everyday people shared countless memories, videos, and emotional tributes not just to the legendary singer, but to the man who had fundamentally inspired their lives. Tour dates were immediately scrubbed, tickets refunded. The stage that had once vibrated with his magnificent voice now stood profoundly silent. And for the first time in decades, David Phelps purposefully stepped away from the spotlight. But he found strength in his refuge. His wife, his children, his faith, they became his unwavering bedrock. In the quiet solitude of his home, in the sacred spaces where no microphone could reach, David began a brand new journey. A journey not fueled by applause, but sustained by the delicate, painstaking process of healing. And though the full shape of David Phelps's future remained a mystery, one core truth was unassailable. For all those years, David Phelps had been a luminous beacon in gospel music, a voice that literally moved spiritual mountains, stirred the deepest parts of the human heart, and lifted countless spirits from despair. But behind those glorious, soaring vocals and the thundering standing ovations, no one could have possibly predicted the ferocious storm that was about to demolish the very foundation of his phenomenal career. Though David had always, without fail, placed his faith and family first, life had abruptly forced him to slow down to a grinding halt. Something fundamental had changed. Serious health concerns emerged, concerns that simply could not be brushed aside. And just like that, the bright spotlight flickered and dimmed. The massive stage fell utterly silent. David Phelps vanished from the public eye. He dedicated his days to the peace of home, surrounded exclusively by the people who mattered most. And in that heavy stillness, he began a deep, spiritual reflection, not merely on his staggering career, but on the true meaning of his purpose. What profound meaning lay hidden within this unexpected, forced pause? Whispers began to nervously circulate throughout the music industry. Some people close to David held firm to the belief that this was a temporary setback, that after a period of recovery, he would rise again, even stronger than before. But others harbored deep doubts. Had the world already witnessed the closing chapter of a once-in-a-generation vocal talent? Music executives, longtime collaborators, Even his closest fellow artists were trapped in an agonizing limbo. Could David still manage to record if live performances were completely impossible? Would his unparalleled voice ever return to its full, powerful strength? Or would he be forced to discover entirely new ways to pour his musical gift into the world, perhaps through intense songwriting, meticulous producing, or maybe even mentoring the next crop of gospel voices? Unanswerable questions hung thick in the air, a silent, pervasive smoke. One thing, however, never wavered, never dimmed: his absolute faith. In a profoundly personal, heartfelt letter shared online, David finally broke his long, nerve-wracking silence. He poured out his thanks to his fans for their ceaseless love, their fervent prayers, and their extraordinary patience. And with a raw, gripping honesty, he wrote, "Even in this long and difficult season, I know without a doubt that God is guiding every step of my path. My voice may need to rest, but my core message will never, ever fade." It wasn't just about the act of singing. It had never been. It was about the spiritual connection, the life-altering message, the powerful spirit behind every single note he delivered. Weeks slowly bled into agonizing months. Still, no public appearances, no performances, just an unbroken silence and a growing, persistent ache of uncertainty among his millions of fans. Would he ever truly return? Or had he already made the painful decision to definitively walk away from the massive stage for good? Some fans genuinely feared the worst. Others desperately clung to hope, praying for a true miracle. And then, with absolutely no warning, it happened. An unassuming, cryptic message suddenly appeared on David's official social media pages. No preceding fanfare, no verbose explanation, just a deceptively simple post. "I have something important to share with you all. Join me this Sunday." Those 5 words instantly ignited a spectacular firestorm of frenzied speculation. Was this the final, tearful goodbye his career was destined for? Or was this, finally, the monumental moment his faithful followers had been praying and waiting for? The anticipation crackled, electric and palpable. When the appointed Sunday arrived, tens of thousands of fans across the entire globe tuned into the live stream. Hearts were pounding. Eyes were fixed on the screen in a breathless silence. And then the picture slowly faded in. There he was, David Phelps. He sat in a studio warmly lit by soft light, his eyes gentle, his expression profoundly peaceful, visibly changed. There was an unmistakable wisdom etched into his gaze, a quiet, resilient strength that can only be earned by walking through a fire and emerging intact on the other side. He took a single, deep breath, and then he began to speak. "These past months have been, without question, the hardest of my entire life. I've faced enormous challenges I never, ever anticipated. There were so many dark days when I truly wasn't sure if I would ever be able to sing again." His voice was heavy with raw, honest emotion. But through it all, he declared, "God never once left my side." He spoke eloquently of the crushing doubt, the pervasive fear, the moments when he questioned absolutely everything he had ever believed. But then, he finally gave the world the answer it had been praying for, begging for. "I'm not done yet." A massive wave of pure, undeniable relief washed over the digital audience. Tears instantly welled up. Smiles spread across countless faces. David Phelps was still standing, still fighting, still singing. He explained that while the difficult road ahead would undoubtedly look different, fewer grueling live shows, more protected time at home, his voice was absolutely not going anywhere. His profound, lifelong purpose was alive and stronger than ever. And then, as if to offer indisputable proof, he reached for the microphone. He closed his eyes, took one final, powerful breath, and he sang. The first note emerged soft, almost a tentative whisper. But then, like a small spark instantaneously catching fire, his voice suddenly soared. It was magnificent. It was utterly unbreakable. This was not merely a performance. It was a visceral declaration, a living testimony of divine grace, of sheer human resilience, of the unshakable, sustaining power of faith. People watching from living rooms, from phones, from every corner of the world, openly wept. Not just because of the unparalleled, soaring beauty of the song, but because they fully understood the deep, profound meaning behind it. David Phelps had not just given them music, he had given them undeniable hope. And whether this singular, triumphant moment marked a complete return to his former life or a poignant, powerful farewell, one enduring truth could never be denied.